Okay, I had to get it all set up there. Hoping everyone can see my screen. And now I just want to try and minimize the other window, because I think it might be blocking my screen.
It looks good from our end.
Okay, yeah, okay, because I can just see people up there, but okay. All right, so good day. And I are here from the region of Peel's Peel Data Center, and we're going to tell you about the journey to our Census Information Hub and also sprinkle in a few demos of the hub and some backend stuff. Census data is a key piece to understanding our communities and the population in them. The Peel Data Center is a central point for data requests in Peel. And we know that this data is used by residents, nonprofits, all levels of government, students, researchers, and even businesses. Every 5 years, Statistics Canada releases a census, and then the Peel Data Center takes that data and synthesizes it for a Peel GTA perspective. In the past, we created these one-dimensional PDF snapshots we called census bulletins. So this is what you're seeing is back in 2006. They're very text-heavy, not particularly engaging. And over time, we started to incorporate more visuals, spatial elements, as you can see. But in some ways, it went into maybe infographic overload. And it could still be overwhelming, was not screen reader friendly or translatable, and we didn't know our user reach. In the back end, it involved a manual, somewhat messy data process, and it was not directly linking users to the underlying data. So despite those consistent improvements over time, it was time for a bigger change. As we prepared for the 2021 census release, we decided to take a different approach. Our organization now had enterprise GIS technology in Esri, so that was going to give us the means to modernize and enable interactivity. We wanted to apply a user-centered design and increase access to a wider range of users and involve more of a storytelling approach. Finally, we wanted to centralize Peel census information and link to our open data portal. There we go. Our journey started in about June of 2021. We approached the early project planning steps as a team, and that really did help get buy-in from everyone. We set up smaller subgroups where team members volunteered to meet and tackle smaller chunks of the project. And a unique step we took was coming together for a project pre-mortem. A pre-mortem is assuming the worst and coming up with all the things that could possibly go wrong before the project even starts. As a team, we brainstormed a list of dozens of problems, our brainstorming session of doom using whiteboard. We then narrowed it down to those that were most likely to happen, were in our control, or were complete showstoppers. And then brainstorm proactive solutions or creative backup plans to mitigate the problems. And finally, team members were assigned to the solutions and to make sure that nothing fell through the cracks. The key problems we identified in the pre-mortem are likely familiar to many people here who have created an application or a web-based tool. By being aware of these potential issues beforehand, we hope to get ahead of them and prevent them from ever happening. So, some examples, to mitigate approval issues down the line, we reached out beforehand to our director, to privacy, to enterprise GIS, and to communications. Loading time was an important issue that came up, especially if we wanted mobile users to use the tool, but desktop users to not be frustrated by waiting. So we had to go in with this top of mind and really make sure that we were going to balance our use of the embedded apps. Device compatibility was a concern. Hub uses responsive design, but packing in maps and graphs can cause issues, and we worked to balance those competing uses as much as possible. Accessibility covered a couple of areas that we were concerned about. Throughout, we did consider accessibility in the sense of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the AODA, but as well as accessibility through the plain language that we were going to be using and through the ease of use. And we wanted to make sure that there was uptake. We wanted the hub to be seen. So to try and extend our reach, we worked with our communications department to create a communications and marketing plan ahead of time. And now hand over to Kevin.
Thanks. So I'm going to go over just working with census data because, as we've mentioned, or if you've ever used it, it's not the easiest thing to work with, and it has some peculiarities you got to figure out before you're using it in GIS. So some of the major things to be aware of when you're bringing census data from beyond 2020 into a database environment for GIS is field names are not database friendly. So the example here, total income groups in 2015 for the population aged 15 years and over in private households, 25% sample data. Databases don't like spaces, they don't like percent signs, they don't like dashes. So that's something we had to fix. Next is census data is hierarchical. And this is important to know for properly calculating percentages and knowing which values, which variables are related to which denominators. So as you can see in this example, there's the indents showing that those dollar amounts are a part of the total income groups and those with total income. And lastly, there's a lot of data that gets released in the census. So just for language data, there's 550 columns of data or rows, depending on how you have it, which is a lot for spreadsheets or databases. So working around that is a bit of a chore. So how did we solve for these issues? One was we replaced certain characters like percentage signs, brackets, dollar signs, essentially a find and replace for all those things we didn't want in there. We imported to a file geodatabase, which is a format in the Azure ecosystem. It saves like a file on your desktop, but it acts like a database, like an actual SQL or SQL database. And that allowed us to make sure that it formatted correctly and the data came up correctly as we had planned for. And that's where, at that step is where we made sure everything was clean and then joined it to our geography. So it wasn't just a table, but it was a table with boundaries associated with it. And lastly, we used a use a tool to apply the full name as an alias for the database friendly name we've created. So in this picture here, you can see on the left side, those are the aliases. So they look like they do in Beyond 2020 with the full name, so without after-tax income. And then on the right is what the field name actually is. So in this case, it's POP-AT with after-tax income. So POP-AT tells us it's population level income data after tax with after-tax income. So we have a script that goes through and puts in the readable name, we'll call it the alias. One tool we created as part of this that saved us a lot of time is what we call our top 5 sorter. So usually we like to provide a top five for certain values in the census, things like languages, ethnicities, or occupations. And in the past, we only did that at the municipal level because it's very time-consuming sorting and finding the top categories. So for this, person on our team created a script that goes through and sorts every single column of data to find the top 5 variables for each category. So that allowed us to do top 5 languages for each census tract, and there's 282 census tracts in Peel. So that was a huge time saver, and it allows us to provide that kind of data that's very detailed, but provide a top 5 overview to everyone. So we're going to use that again for ethnicities and occupations once those are released. So for this project, we treated it as you would any sort of software application. So we had a formalized set of unit tests for each page, feature, and behavior. And this was helpful to create consistency across our dozen initial pages and then any future pages we release. And it allows us to track for any regressions or sort of new bugs that might pop up in the future to make sure we don't sort of cause new issues. And this picture below is an example of our unit test sheet. So it has exactly what each little specific test is. So does this work? Is this button in the location that it needs to be? When you do this, does this happen? And that's essentially what we do for every page. Browser and device tests were also performed to make sure that it worked on a variety of platforms, so things like tablets, phones, and desktops. And we also tested it in a couple of mainstream browsers, so Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, and Firefox. So we found some issues with trying to make graphs work well in a mobile portrait view, but it's something that's difficult to fix fully just because a phone screen's so narrow and you can only sort of shrink graphs and text so small within graphs or within dashboards.
User experience testing was another critical piece of the project, and it was perhaps one of our biggest wins, and it was also a first for our team. So prior to starting the testing, we developed a prototype. We created a landing page and 3 data release pages using the 2016 census data. So that was our prototype. We didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in the design process. Then we categorized user groups for testing as beginner, intermediate, advanced, or census expert. And we also wanted representation from both internal and external testers. We developed a standard user testing guide with a script of pointed questions and opportunities to observe how the users were interacting with the hub. So for example, some of the questions: what do you first notice about this page? You've come looking for the population of Brampton. What would your next step be? What did you like or dislike the most about the hub? We hosted 20 one-on-one sessions that were about an hour long each, using screen share with another team member in attendance to take really detailed notes on the responses and the observations of how the user was interacting. We compiled and analyzed the feedback, grouping it into similar themes, and then we finally had to go in and identify what feedback was doable, if there was a workaround, and in some cases it was maybe not possible due to AGOL limitations. So we learned that none of the feedback was shocking or suggested we needed a complete overhaul, and that was a huge relief. The top likes and dislikes are listed here. The aesthetics, the interactivity, and the balanced layout all resonated. Least like mentions included a download option that wasn't intuitive, its font size was too small, and like the table of contents navigation and back to top were not noticeable enough. And all of these things were totally doable. So in addition to getting some of these key edits, what this also told us is that we were on the right track. We weren't way off in our vision, and that was really valuable to have confirmed earlier on in the process before we continued with the rest of the development. And that brings us to the key aspects of our design approach. Interactivity was important, but knowing that embedding maps, apps, and dashboards can add tens of megabytes to page load and several seconds to loading time, we did want to use these features sparingly. And so therefore we took advantage of Hub's built-in graph functions, which are these kind of more simplified graphs wherever possible to just keep things quicker. We did want to add, the interactive maps and dashboards, but we understood that those may be new to users or overwhelming. So alongside them we include a simple brief guide to interpreting these type of visuals. We took advantage of Hub's customization capabilities whenever we could. So, taking it a step further using JSON, HTML, or CSS. And then the underlying data used in the Hub is also released on our open data portal and then directly linked for download. So this kind of move to online enabled us to kind of have more of this interactivity and choice. Telling a story this time was important. And so for making the content relatable, we tried to simplify the language as much as possible so that more people could understand the concepts and the relation to their lives. On each page, or with the data, we include explanations to help describe the why. So we're not just pushing numbers out. And we include examples of how the data is used, which really helps make the connect for people as to why they're even filling out the census in the first place. And then we also created a dedicated help and resources page that has a variety of resources to help and use the Hub itself, but then also just to help understand census data in general. And then, another big goal of ours was to, open it up to more users and kind of increase access. So we incorporated accessibility from a number of angles. From the AODA side, we did try to maximize our compatibility by using larger font size, proper color contrast, and properly structured pages to assist users. We do note that web apps and some of the other visualization tools are not 100% accessible at this time. We use the AGOL features built in, as well as HTML standards, to make the tool as screen reader friendly as possible, again, within the limits set up by the Hub platform. We enable the translation feature on the Hub to allow users to translate the text to a language of their choice. And then the plain language that we had used further improved the auto translate and was understandable for several colleagues of ours that tested it in a language that they knew. And then responsive design, again, was important, and that allows the tool to work on large screens as well as phone screens. Again, it wasn't, it's not always kind of perfect, as Kevin mentioned, but this was moving online as allowing us to do that. Lastly, the user can choose what level they want to explore, so increasing access in that way. So for some, that may mean jumping straight to, clicking the download the data button. But for others, it may mean exploring a section a little further and getting an understanding of the why. So all those choices kind of add up to open up this important information to Peel's diverse population and to a wider audience. And now I'm going to hop over to the Hub itself and just give you a quick demo. So here we have the landing page. You'll notice it's split between available and upcoming releases. So the upcoming releases you'll see are grayed out. They're not active. We do give some kind of general dates as to when they can be expected. And this is largely based on Statistics Canada's release schedule and then the time that we need to develop them. These 2 pages, for example, are ready to go. They're just kind of going through the final approval process. And then that's in comparison to these available releases, which you'll see they kind of come alive under your mouse. They're colorized and they are clickable. We also have the header bar that kind of follows you on every page, and it gives you another way to access the data release pages or downloading the data. And then we have created pages for all of the 2016 data releases as well. There's multiple areas within the Hub to link to the downloading the data. And another great thing for moving to this kind of online version is, we have the ability to continually gather feedback. So then if we go look at a page, we use a mix of visual elements and text to tell a story, setting it up, out of the gate with, how this data has been used for this particular release. We have the interesting quick fact boxes that are great for grabbing for like communications materials or grant applications or presentations. And then we show kind of like maybe most popular or most requested data points kind of in this larger font towards the top right away. We have the table of contents that allows you to jump to a section rather than just scrolling. And then we always have this back to the top button that brings you back to the top. We throughout, I mentioned these built-in graphs earlier, so we do try and use those as much as possible in order to keep the page quicker. But then we also have the dashboards that add that additional interactivity and maps. So these are, very interactive, allow you to kind of look at more of a neighborhood scale. You have the pop-ups, the search buttons, screenshot. But as I mentioned before, we have these little simple guides alongside them just to kind of give a little bit further understanding of how to use it. And then we also include explanations throughout as to why you might be seeing some of the numbers you're seeing or the trends you're seeing. And we use, again, the plain language throughout, and that also includes kind of trying to simplify some of StatsCan's definitions a little bit more. And then another final kind of important piece of this is the link to our open data portal and being able to download the data sets so that Users have the option to then take it further if they want, or view the data in a different way. So our open data portal allows you to do a few things. One thing is, you can just go and like filter the table yourself and like find the data points that you want, or download the whole table. You can filter in place and just find a number that you want for a specific variable. You can download Excel, like Excel tables or spatial files to then use as you wish. We also, sorry. You can also view the data like visually in the map. So, for something like census tracts, this is great because if you know like the area of what you're looking at, you can also just quickly pop over and see things closer. The pop-up will show you all of the variables that are in the table for that area, for that census tract. And then you can also take it further and create a map. And this is all for free with it. Like if you have, you can just do it without signing in to a free ArcGIS Online account, or you could just be doing this and not necessarily save it. So now it's going to let you do some more design, but again, kind of keeping it simple. You can choose what attribute you want to show. So if we're going to say, let's say the 2021 population, then it's going to give you the ways that you can start to design the map. For something like this, you'd often want a choropleth map. So you just, press a button and there you go. And it's created, a legend, and you're seeing that gradient from low to high population. Then you can further configure a pop-up. So renaming things, the pop-up by default would have all of the variables, which may be overkill. So then you can kind of just say, okay, I'm going to show the census tract name and the 2016 population, the 2021 population. And now your pop-up will just have that information. And then you can also label it. The default right now is showing the census tract name, but that can obviously be changed to another variable and then, so you're getting that kind of choropleth looking map, but then you can also add more data sets. This will be searching all of ArcGIS Online, anything that's kind of publicly up on open data or publicly released. To limit that, you can filter to show only content within this map area. So something I'm going to say is points of interest. So this is a data set that we have on our open data. Can layer that in. And now you're starting to see how you can, kind of layer on this information. You could then further symbolize those points of interest to just show, for example, like social services or hospitals or something like that. And then it's interactive. You're able to click on things and find out more information. So that was just a quick kind of tutorial how you can kind of jump from the ArcGIS Hub that's linked to the open data portal, and then you're starting to see other ways that you can like either download or visualize the data. So I'm going to hop back over to the presentation, and then Kevin can keep going.
Thanks. So when we started this project, we planned to use the Census Hub as the basis for providing updates to our data products that we release for each census cycle. So for 2022, our focus has been on the continuous releases that'll keep on going out to November. And then our final census page will be added in December. We usually have about a 4-week turnaround time from the data being released to when we make it public. So we're going to continue to follow through on our communications plan that was created to drive traffic and awareness of the tool. So our comms team created a plan late last year with us, and it includes a couple different ways they get the information out to tell people that we've added this new data onto the website. So starting in 2023, our work will focus on 2 additional products. So the first is Peel as a Village. And this is a visualization we do to show what Peel would look like if it was a village of 100 people. So instead of percentages or actual numbers, it's, 5 out of 100 people would be X. To kind of bring it down to more digestible numbers. And then the second project will be the word profiles, which once we receive the data through CDP, we'll be able to update. And both of those products will be similar or simpler, than the data we're currently releasing through this tool, and won't have the same breadth of information. It'll be more of an overview rather than an in-depth look at Peel. We're also continuously monitoring our site traffic through the Google Analytics integration that Hub has, and user feedback through our survey 123 and email to get an idea of pain points, issues with site design, referral sources, and user engagement with our pages. So our team has learned, or in some cases, relearned several lessons as we went through this work. So one was spend more time on data processing up front, especially because handling census data can be complex. Fixing issues up front saved us a lot of headaches and chaos later with multiple tables flying around. Part of this process was standardizing naming conventions for files and feature services, as we mentioned earlier, but also the organization of data, maps, and apps within ArcGIS Online through labels, tags, and metadata. The limitations of a low-code platform was something that popped up from time to time. So in the past, with both PDF and web-based products, if we wanted to make a change to something specific, it wasn't really an issue. We could go in and dig around in Illustrator or tweak JavaScript or the styles. So the ease of use of this product, or this platform, I should say, has a trade-off of being limiting. So you'll have to be content sort of within those limits and those bounds. Designing tools to share data with the common user is hard. So at the start of this project, there was a lot of excitement with stuffing the tool with many apps and maps, dashboards as possible. That took away from its usability. So for someone who doesn't look at data or maps, 35 plus hours a week like we do, they would likely give up on trying to use the tool because they don't know what the data is showing, what it means, and why it's the way it is. So there was a lot of simplification that happened to the tools, as well as the language from the original proof of concept. Third, user experience testing was time well spent. So it took a fair amount of time to set up, find people to undertake the testing and compile the results. Like Andrea said, we interviewed about 20 people, and 20 people an hour each, so that was about 20 hours of just interviews. But the results were incredibly helpful. So that's something we're going to continue with in the future. So in the end, the project did have value outside of the ability to provide data to our users. It gave us new experiences and knowledge that can be applied to future projects, as we expect to see more of these data sharing projects coming through our pipeline in the coming years. The UX testing gave us valuable insights for how users think and interact with our tools and what they expect from us. The focus on creating a data tool that was approachable rather than nice to have was a great learning and a great experience. And as this was the first team-wide project to span more than a couple of weeks, it's improved our project management skills and team dynamics. It's also provided some additional value to our team. So the focus on trying to reduce repetitive data transformation efforts will result in time savings not only for future census releases, but help us save time for future data requests from clients. It's also been a good stepping stone for our team towards understanding the automation of data transformation. I will give you a demo of what it's like to edit the census, the hub from behind the scenes. Okay, is it up now, Andrea? Is everyone okay? So as you can tell, it looks the same as it would for you when you view this. The only difference is because I'm logged in, I have this edit button. So really all it is you press that edit button and it opens this new panel that provides you settings. So I'm on the main page right now. It gives me all these settings that can apply to the entire website. So things like a theme. So I can set the colors for the web page that apply to everything. So in this case, these are setting colors for links. So we want the link colors to be this type of blue. We want our buttons to be this type of blue, and that's matching with our region appeal color scheme that Communications has. You can change your fonts, for example, as well. There's other things here that you can change, like the header, like Andrea mentioned, that's up here. So there's two that are predefined and are super easy to modify and change and add links to. In our case, we wanted to have something a bit more custom, so we could have those drop downs. So this is where you need to start having some experience in HTML or CSS. So CSS is a type of styling language, I guess you can call it. You can use it to tell the browser what colors to make something, what size to make the font. So that's essentially what we've done here, is to make the colors a certain way and show certain links. So in this case, it applies to everything. I'll show you what it looks like to make a page. So what we do is we have, so these are all of our pages. We start off with an existing page, and all we do to save time is we click here and click clone. And then what it does is it creates a brand new page, but it keeps it exactly the same. And from that, we save a whole bunch of time of setting everything up again. It does take a couple seconds to work. So essentially, ArcGIS Hub is meant to be fairly simple to use. If you don't know HTML or CSS, you can totally make a great looking page. How it works is it's drag and drop essentially. So it's called a what you see is what you get editor. So all you do is you pick something from the side, you drop it in here, and then you can start adding other things to it. So for example, I can add a text box, I can make a title, I can start typing in text here. And then maybe beside that, I want to put a number. Maybe I want to put, let's see, so drag and drop into there. Let's do, oops. Let's do population and dwellings. I clicked the wrong button. We save. And then now I just need to pick a statistic field. So in this case, I want it to be a number because I want to show a number. So I would pick 2021 population, or sorry, dwellings. Right now it's just showing 8 because it's a count. So we choose the statistic type and then we can filter. So if we want to show just Peel, for example, it brings the filter down here and then you just type in what do you want it to be. And then now it's showing this the number of dwellings in Peel. You can add a title. And it lets you add trailing text. So maybe we want dwelling units here. You can change things like colors and everything. So it's pretty simple. Just drag and drop. You can also resize things that are beside each other. Maybe we want this number to be a bit smaller because we have a lot more text we want to show. And then you can get a little fancier. You can start adding in charts. So you just drag it over. You'll see all these little things pop up here. And that's just showing you where it's going to place it once you put your mouse over it. So let's just say we want our chart below, or if I miss it. And now it gives me the options on the left side. It'll update and give you what the options are for that chart you added. So there's bar charts, line charts, and pie graphs and scatter graphs. I'll show you what JSON does in a minute. It's a bit more complicated. We'll bring up the population and dwellings again by CD and CSD. So by default, it just kind of shows the first thing it finds, which in this case makes no sense. So first we'll pick a category attribute. So the category we want to show the population by census subdivision. So in this case, we want census subdivision name. So now you'll see it's Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, which is right, but it's still just showing something that's not very useful. It's just showing a count the number of times it shows up in the table. So now under value attribute, we would choose what we want to show. So maybe we want to show private dwellings occupied by usual residents. We click that, and it'll update and give you the pie graph. And then there are some other, options available in here, like chart title, links by municipality. And that's how you make just a simple graph based on the data that you have. And you can go more complex. So we have gone more complex to tweak the colors in some of our graphs, as well as grouping bars. The problem is it's not the easiest thing to do because they don't have very good documentation on how to do it. So it's not for the faint of heart if you're not into this kind of thing. So this is essentially where you can edit what it's telling it to do at a very fine grain level. So we've done that for some of our graphs where we need a bit more complexity in them. For very complex things, dashboards and maps we need, you can just drag and drop an application. And within ArcGIS Online, you can create web apps, or you can use the dashboard builder. So for dashboards, like Andrew said, we don't use them a ton. We'll use like maybe 1 or 2 for every release, just because they're a lot heavier to load on a mobile device. So I'll show you a more complex dashboard we've made. This is core housing needs that'll be coming out soon. So all you do is you just plop it in, and then it loads the application like you see it as if it was sort of standalone. So it embeds it within here. Like the demo Andrew showed, it does let you do things like filters, and it won't let me click on it now, but if you clicked on, below affordability, it would update other numbers as well. And that's how we put in those more complex graphs within our pages. So, if you need something more complex than this, a simple pie graph or a bar chart, you can then create a dashboard, which isn't too hard to learn. There's no coding or anything. It's sort of drag and drop and change settings, kind of like you would in Excel. You would create that dashboard separately and then bring it in, and you can have like a full featured dashboard like this without any sort of coding or anything fancy like that. So like I said, it's sort of, you can go from very simple, or if you're a bit more skilled in sort of the HTML, CSS, JavaScript side of things, you can kind of dig in and start customizing things a little further than you would otherwise. All right, that's the end of my demo.
That was great. Thank you so much, both Andrea and Kevin. I certainly learned a lot, and so much hard work went into creating those products. So very cool to see the behind the scenes. Was there any questions for either Andrea or Kevin before we move on to Jamie's presentation? There's a question in the chat right now. To create top 5 lists from census data, I assume top 5 values were considered. However, how did you go about skipping category or group values to not be included in the top 5 list?
I could check the code because I can't remember off the top of my head. I believe part of it was looking, there's certain terms they use usually for the group categories, and that's sort of, it looked for certain terms that it would skip over to ignore those. But I can look and get back to you in the chat while we're still here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. There's another question just asking like the timeline. So how long did the project take?
We so we started in, say, June 2021, and then we launched after the first release. So the first release was February. By the time we got it all up, the launch was, I guess, early March. So I don't even know how many months that is, but and then so that was like kind of like the biggest chunk of work, and that now it's been pretty much a monthly thing because we're getting these releases every month. But as you can see, because we had those 2016 pages done, we were able to then clone them And then you kind of just are, you're updating with new data and things like that, but it's great because you're not starting from scratch again. So it actually was this time savings from putting all that work in for those first 8 months or whatever it was.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty quick. Only a month turnaround now with each of the new census releases. So yeah, it does look like the infrastructure you set off definitely paid off. One more question before we move on to Jamie's presentation. What is the % or number of external users of your hub?
Unfortunately, that's harder to tell now because everyone or almost everyone at the region is still remote, so they're not, and we're not required to connect in through the VPN. So it's hard to tell what the percentage or the breakdown is between regional staff and the public. So we can't really give you an answer, unfortunately.
Thanks for answering that.
I do have something to add to that. One thing that I've noticed, I guess, anecdotally, is because as Kevin was mentioning, we can like kind of track the usage stats, not who they are, but and so because we had that communications and marketing plan, and communications has been on board since the beginning, we're kind of in some of their, like, for example, the newsletters that goes out to hundreds of thousands of residents, like every month. It's called Connect Appeal, and we just have like a little link in that, and like every time you'll watch our users bump up, like you can see that in our analytics. So like things like that, we're able to just kind of see, like, we know that that's largely residents that are getting this Connect Appeal newsletter. So we're seeing these big bumps at every month when those go out. Just as a
nice, that's really exciting that it's reaching such a wide audience.
But yeah, it's great because like anytime we have, something, we are tweeting it out and things like that, you'll see little bumps in the analytics, which again, we could never do any of this stuff before with the PDFs. So.
Nice, that's great. I think just in the interest of time, we'll move on to Jamie's presentation. But if you and Kevin wanted to answer questions in the chat, feel free to continue conversations on the side. And then just so everyone knows, we will open it up to questions again at the end of the session today. So with that, over to you now, Jamie.
Thanks, Sasha. Hi, everyone. So for my presentation, I'm going to be showing something a little different. I'm going to be giving a live demo of how you can build maps of CDP data using QGIS. So QGIS is kind of it's sort of a free and open source alternative to the ArcGIS product. It doesn't offer any of the same kind of functionality that we just saw in the Peel Region Hub. It's mainly focused on building static maps and performing like geospatial analysis. It's more analogous to like ArcGIS Pro as a product. But it is quite a powerful tool in its own right, and it's not too difficult to pick up and learn. So this will be kind of a demonstration of how quick and easy it can be to produce maps of census variables at basically no cost other than accessing the CDP data and just the time it spends spent making the map. So before I get into QGIS, I want to show you the data prep side of things. So to start, we'll need to acquire the data sets to build the map. So we'll need two things. We'll need the shape file and the data set that we want to use. So for this, I'm going to be creating a map of population living in collective dwellings by census division in Ontario. I kind of just chose this, but that would be a good example that you could use to, build maps of any CDP data set. So first thing we'll need would be the shapefile of census divisions. So you can find shapefiles of census geographies on the Statistics Canada website. You just go to the Geography tab, and then under Spatial Information Products, you click Boundary Files, and From there, you select the census year that you want. So I'm using a 2021 census data set, so I'll select that. From here, you choose the file that you want to download, and just to note, you can pick between cartographic boundary files and digital boundary files. So this is what the difference between those looks like. Cartographic boundary files follow the exact coastlines of each geography, whereas digital kind of surrounds the area. So for this map, I think cartographic will look better. So that's generally the one I pick. So you just select that, and then you select the level of geography you want. So we want census divisions, which will be under the administrative boundaries section, and then you choose the format, and we want a shapefile. This is kind of the popular format for storing vector spatial data. So any kind of polygon, point, or line data, and you can open these at QGIS or ArcGIS or any GIS software. So you just click continue, and then you download it. So I've already downloaded it ahead of time, just so I don't have to, just to save time. But one thing to note is that the file size for the shapefiles from Statistics Canada are often pretty large because they include a lot of detail in them, which is good because it makes them very accurate, but sometimes it's kind of an excessive level of detail if you're making like a large scale map like of Ontario, like we are. So what I generally do is use this tool called MapShaper. It's a website, mapshaper.org. And what it does is it has an algorithm that it uses for simplifying shapefiles. So it just removes points or vertices from the file in such a way that it will kind of preserve the shape. So I'll show you how that works. You just drag and drop, oh wait, that's the wrong one. Drag and drop the shape file in. Import it. And so that is there's the map of census divisions in Canada. And so you just want to apply this simplification algorithm. I just select the default one. And then it just takes a second to load. And from there, you would select the percentage of the original file size that you want to reduce it down to. So I usually often will go down to around 15%, as I find doing that. It preserves the shape well, and as long as you're not zooming in too far, you probably won't notice a difference. Like if you're looking at Ontario, it'll be very hard to distinguish. So the simplification can cause some errors, so you can easily just repair those by clicking that there. And then from there, you would just export it, and it's ready to go, basically. And then the other piece that we need to prepare the data for this would be the actual census variables that we want to map. So I'm using this collective dwellings table. So you would just download this from the CDP website at the geographies you want. So doing this one for census divisions. So I've already downloaded that and I've opened it up here. So I'll show you how I would prepare the data to export it. So when you're joining data from like this to a shapefile, you'd want to set the data up so that each geography has one row and then each variable is represented in one column. So you're basically keeping it as a two-dimensional table. And then I'll show you later why that's important, but basically that'll allow you to join this to the shapefile. So we want to only export census divisions. So we can use the search function in Beyond 2020 to filter that. So you would just, for the level section, you would type in CD for census division, and then that will filter them, filter the geography list to just show census divisions. And to be able to join it with the shapefile, we'll want to use the UID labels, as those will be the labels that are included in the shapefile as well. So there's multiple dimensions in this table, but we're just interested in, let's say, the population and collective dwellings, and then the number of collective dwellings. And we're only looking at Ontario. And you could filter the data from within beyond 2020, but I think it'll actually be easier to filter it later in QGIS. I'll show you how to do that. And then you have the full data set. If you wanted to make a map of another province, you could easily do that. You already have the data. And because it's not a very large amount of data, I'm just going to copy paste it rather than exporting through file, save as, and all that. So there's a limit on how much you can copy paste out, but this won't be too large for that. So you just Control C with the column selected. And then I have a blank Excel spreadsheet here. So I'll just paste those in. But before I do that, I want to make sure the first column is formatted to text so that it's storing the UID field as text. If it converts it to a number, then that could cause issues and it might not join properly in QGIS. So this will save time. And then you just want to make sure there's only one row of column headers. So let's delete that top row and I'll name this field UID. And then this file is good to go. So now we're ready to jump into QGIS. So in QGIS, to bring the files that we just downloaded in, you go to the browser tab. You can also drag and drop files in, but I think it's better to go through the browser tab and then you can kind of keep stock of the files that you're using for the project. I've created a folder where I've stored the 2 files that I just downloaded for the project, just to keep them all in one place. And so you would just, navigate through the folders here to find them generally, but I've already went ahead and done that and then saved that to my favorites folders just so it's easily accessible. So from there, you can just drag and drop the files in. So I have the shapefile stored as a zip, which will be fine for this. If you're doing any kind of edits on it, you'll want to unzip it, but it won't matter for just creating a simple map like this. So you would just drag the .shp part of it in, and now we have our shapefile of census divisions. And then we'll want to drag our data table in next. And so you won't be able to see that on the map because there's no visual or spatial component to it, but you can see it in the layers list. So now we want to join these two together. So first thing I would do would be to check the attribute table for the census division shapefile. So this is a table where each row represents one feature in the shapefile, and then each column is a bit of data about that. So if you click on one, it'll highlight the corresponding shapefile, and then we can see its UID, its name, the province UID, where it's located. And so this shows us that we want to use the CD UID field to join with the census data that we extracted, because they are both the geography identifiers. So to join them, you'll want to go to the processing toolbox and look for a tool called, it's called Join Attributes by Field Value. So you can just search for join and it should come up. You double click to open that. And what this will do, this will allow us to basically take the columns from our the census data table and just join them to the shapefile attribute table. And then it will look for common values in the CD UID and the UID rows to line up the rows from each table to join them properly. So the input layer in this tool, that will that determines which file you're going to be joining data to. So that'll be the shapefile in this case. And then we're using the CDUID field to join them. So you would select that there. And then input layer 2 is the table that you're joining to the input layer. So that'll be sheet 1, which is our census data, and we want to select our UID field. And it's good to make sure that they're both stored in the same format. So they're both being stored as text strings. So no issues there. But if one was being stored as like integers, then you'd probably have to convert it before trying to join them. You can select which fields you want to join. I'll just leave it empty so that it'll automatically join all fields. The join type, so you can do one to many or one to one. So we'll just do one to one because each table has one row for each geography in this case. And then you can choose where to save the file. And you can, if you want to, you can create a table where any rows that aren't joined will be stored, but it won't be an issue here since we know they'll join properly. And I'm not going to bother saving a new shapefile, which I would recommend doing generally, but just for the speed things along, I'm just going to save a temporary layer that'll just be stored in this project. So you just run that, and then it will generate this joined table. And then I would open the attribute table and just check that the join worked as expected, and we can see that it did. The 3 columns from the census table are now attached to the shapefile. So from here we can start actually mapping out the variables. So I'm gonna, or actually before I do that, I'm going to filter down to Ontario since, as I mentioned, I just wanted to make a map of Ontario. So to do that, you can just right-click the layer and choose filter, and then you would write an expression here, and it would filter according to that. So we want to filter to just the features where the province UID would be the province UID for Ontario, which is 35. So to do that, you would just write in the expression here, PRUID equals 35, and the numbers in that are actually stored as text, so we'll want quotation marks. And to do that, it should just filter it. So now it's only showing the features where the province UID is equal to 35. So now we can start mapping the variables. So I'm going to create a choropleth map, which is a map where each polygon is colored in according to the value for a selected indicator or variable. So to do that, you go to the layer styling tab, and under this section, there's different options for how you color in the polygons. By default, it's single symbol, so everything is given the same color, but we want to choose graduated. And so this will create that choropleth map. You select the variable that you want to map. So we're going to do population and collective dwellings. And then to actually make it appear, you have to classify it. So classifying it will create categories, each representing a range of values for the selected variable, and with an associated color, and then the features where their values fall into those classes will be given that associated color. And there's different methods for classifying, and you can choose the number of classes here. But to actually do that, you just click the classify button, and then it will automatically generate them. So by default, it uses the equal count method or quantiles. So basically each category contains the same number of features. You can control the number of classes if you want to change that. There's several different ones you can just use by default here. So there's also another popular popular one is natural breaks. So it kind of finds natural breaking points in the data to create those categories. And then you can also look at the histogram to see where the classes kind of fall in the distribution of the data. So I think it's important to consider classification, like how you're classifying the data, because it does have a big impact on how the data is perceived. And you can see as you switch between these different methods, it gives a pretty different impression of what the data looks like and where the variation is and what the higher values are. So, just be aware of the classification you're using. Often I do some kind of manual fine tuning so the numbers look a little nicer than, these ones using a lot of odd numbers. I'm not going to go too much into that right now though, because it'd take too long. So I'll just go by equal count. But I will change the color ramp. I'm not a big fan of the white and red colors. So I'll go with yellow green. And so now the darker green values are the census divisions that have the higher population and collective dwellings. You can also add labels to the map through the layer styling tab. Like if you wanted to add the census division name or the actual values. But I won't do that either right now because it just takes time to get everything looking nice and formatted properly. So I'm just going to keep it really simple for this map. So the data is now set up and we can start actually building the map layout. So to do that, you go to the project tab and then create a new print layout. Let's give it a name. And this would bring you to the layout editor where you can basically create a map with a title and a legend and all the elements you would expect to see in a map. And kind of create that layout. So it's not really for editing the data, but for more editing what the map will look like when you export it. So first thing you would do generally would be to add the map to the layout. So you use any of these little buttons with the pluses to add different elements to the layout. So I'll start with the map. So you would just click that and then drag and drop the area where you want the map to appear. I often just do it cover the whole map with it, or the whole layout with it. And by default, if you drag and drop around, you'll be dragging and dropping the different elements of the layout. But if you want to actually edit the map itself, then you can select this Move Item Content button, and then that will let you actually drag and drop around the map. Select it, then you can zoom in and out too. I'll basically leave that as is though. I'm just gonna not do anything too complicated for this. So, generally you'd add a title to it. I can call this one Population and Collective Dwellings by CD in Ontario, 2021. And then you can edit the font to make it more title sized and choose a different font to make it larger, make it bold. So there you have a title, and then you might want to add a scale bar too. So to do that, you just click the Add Scale Bar button and drag and drop again, and then it'll generate them for you. There's lots of options for customizing how it'll appear, but you can just leave it as the default too. And then the other thing I'll add, which you would definitely need for a map like this, would be the legend, because this will tell anyone who's viewing the map exactly what the colors on the map represent in terms of values for population and collective dwelling. Yeah, so you drag and drop and it'll automatically generate a legend for you. Usually you want to deselect auto update so you can control what is appearing in the legend, remove anything you don't want. You can add a title, but because there's only one layer in the legend, we don't really need a title. But you would want to, for example, name this population of collective dwellings. You can add a frame around it. You can remove the unnecessary spacing at the top and add some space within the frame, a little bit of padding. You could play around with the fonts too. I'm kind of running out of time, so I won't bother with any of that. But yeah, I mean, just in that time, you produced a basic static map of a census variable starting from scratch, basically. So from there, you can export it as an image or as a PDF if you want to use it as a figure in a report, or have it as a static PDF map that you can share. Yeah, so that kind of covers everything I wanted to show. Just wanted to show, how it's really not too difficult to create a map like this, and it doesn't take too long. And I think QGIS is a bit daunting if you just open it for the first time and you've never used it before. But I think with a little bit of direction, it's actually not too difficult to learn how to use it to do basic tasks like this. So thanks, and let me know if you have any questions.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jamie. Were there any questions for either of our presenters today? And we'll be putting the recording on the Community Data Program website. So if you need to reference anything that was said today, that will be a lasting resource through the Community Data Program website. Well, if there's not any more questions, I just wanted to say thank you to both Kevin and Andrea for sharing all your hard work at PL Region. Definitely lots of interesting things that I learned today, and I'm sure lots of other people did as well. And same to you, Jamie. Thanks for showing that demonstration. As Jamie said, you can quickly produce something with a very powerful image in only a few minutes once you kind of have your workflow sorted out. So again, thanks, Jamie, for sharing that. I'm happy to stick around a little bit longer if anyone does have any last minute questions, but I'll formally close the webinar for today. And thanks again for everyone for coming and asking questions.
Thanks for having us.